For more than a generation, flight would be defined by piston engines and spinning propellers. But as we approached the eve of World War II, a radical idea would take shape. One that would shatter speed records, transform warfare, and send humanity beyond Earth's bounds. This is the story of the jet engine and the rocket. A story of innovation, born in crisis and destined to reshape the world. Between world wars, aviation would enter what is called its golden age, where wooden biplanes would give way to all-metal monoplanes. You had pioneers like Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart who would prove that the dream of long-distance flight was actually reality. And yet, by the 30s, engineers would realize that propellers were beginning to reach their limits. And the answer would lay really simply in the old principle of action and reaction. But when applied with modern science, we would find a new system. In Britain, you would have Frank Whittle, who would file a turbojet patent in 1930. And in Germany, Hans von Ohain and Ernst Heinkel would build the HE 178, which would fly in August of 1939. Meanwhile, across the ocean, you have US researchers who would begin experimenting with rocket engines and begin laying the groundwork for America's future space program. Though the first jets would appear too late to really change the outcome of the war, their arrival truly would ignite a technological arms race. The Messerschmitt Me-262 was the first operational jet fighter and was capable of speeds of 540 miles an hour. It would hunt Allied bombers and consistently be an overall nuisance to Allied pilots. You would have the British Meteor that would protect London from V-1 missiles. Meanwhile, you would have American rocket experiments. These would be conducted under tight security and contribute data for guided missiles. These innovations would force new tactics and change air strategy, but ultimately would consume a large amount of resources throughout their development. Victory in 1945 would leave America holding an arsenal of advanced technologies and a skilled industrial base. Factories that built wartime jets and rockets would go on to produce commercial airliners. The Boeing 707 and later the 747 would shrink the globe, making transcontinental travel routine. At home, communities would grow around aerospace hubs. Universities began aeronautical programs, and a generation of engineers created an economic boom. This would be known as the Jet Age, which would come after the war as a result of this. However, this era of freedom and progress was not without its drawback, as you would consistently face the threat of nuclear weapons, nuclear-armed bombers, and intercontinental missiles. Today's aerospace is much different than it was back then. We still have a lot of wartime breakthroughs, but our systems are entirely different now. High bypass turbofans, which are more quiet and fuel efficient on our airliners. We have autonomous drones, hypersonic vehicles, and ultimately, on the civilian side, the commercial space sector is bound to be within our grasp within the next 20, 30 years. And with these, we face new challenges. Rapid response warfare, satellite, even environmental concerns over the carbon emissions and space debris. These are all new realities that we're going to have to face at the end of the day. Now, to spare you the boring details of what could have been a very, very long video for yourself, I'm going to summarize the chapters I had. Please feel free to ask if you want the long video. It is not edited. It is very long and boring. If you want it, ask. be my guest, but necessity was a catalyst truly for the invention of jet aircraft. Because the reality is, you've got to be able to. What would have probably taken decades to truly implement was compressed down to months through wartime use. And while these technologies would ultimately go to commercial fields, the reality is they're still based in war with most of their development. And speed, freedom, and progress are big, definitions for the jet age. But you face a lot of ethical concerns and even environmental ones, albeit not at the direct forefront. But that's to keep it brief for you. And remember that even the first spark, the first ever turbojet, to the roar of the rockets that we have now, our journey is one that doesn't come without effort and ambition and dedication. And it raises us questions. What responsibilities do we have to factor with this new technology and as it grows? How can we balance keeping security and national defense while still being allowed exploration? And with a world that's shaped by this new technology, how do we ensure that this progress actually serves us? All of humanity, not just a select few, decides so. And I truly think that all of these people, even if there are none likely around anymore, deserve all the credit for truly making what would have been impossible possible.